Hi guys, we're going to pick it back up with The Wild Robot, Chapter 18. As you know, reader, Roz has always liked to keep herself as clean as possible, but her desire to stay alive was stronger than her desire to stay clean. Remember, the bears are after her. The robot decided that it was time she got dirty. Roz was going to camouflage herself. She didn't think the idea would from the stick. She got the idea from the stick insect, but Roz quickly realized the camouflaging herself as a twig was a lot out of the question. No, the robot would have to blend in with the landscape itself. So she began by smearing handfuls of thick mud over her entire body, and then she plucked ferns and grasses from the ground and sank their roots into her muddy coating. She then placed colorful flowers around her face and disguised her glowing eyes. And the bare patches were covered with tree leaves and snips of moss. Our robot now looked like a great tuft of plants walking through the forest. She waited for the darkness, and then she padded into the center of the clearing, nestling herself between the rocks, and she became part of the landscape. A few hours later, the sky was brightened, the fog was lifting, the nighttime animals were sinking home, and the daytime animals were beginning to stir. It was just an ordinary morning on the island. However, there was that new rift of plants that in the one forest clearing. Only the bees had noticed the tuft. They buzzed around, and completely unaware that the robot was hidden beneath. And so Roz was there, right in the open, yet completely unseen. She watched the flowers slowly turn toward the sun. She listened to the rodents crawl through the weeds. She smelled the moist, piney air. She felt the worms wiggle in her muddy sides. And a week later, the tuft of plants was gone, but there was a new clump of seaweed on the shore. A week after that, the clump of seaweed was gone, but there was a new bramble on the mountain. There was a new log on the riverbank, and a new rock in the forest. Chapter 19. Observations. Clouds scuttled through the sky. Spiders spun intricate webs. Berries beckoned to hungry mouths. Foxes stalked hares. Mushrooms rose up from the leaf litter. Turtles plopped onto their ponds. Moss spread across the tree roots. Vultures hunched over carcasses. Ocean waves beat against the coastline. Tadpoles became frogs. Caterpillars became butterflies. And a camouflage robot observed it all. Chapter 20. The Language of Animals. It started with the birds. They had been skittish when the robot was near. They would stare and screech and then scatter. But now that Roz was camouflaged, she could secretly observe the normal behavior right up close. Roz noticed chickadees fluttering through the same flowers and singing the same songs every morning. She noticed a lark who swooped down to the same rock and sang the same song every afternoon. She noticed the two magpies singing to each other across the same meadow every evening. After weeks of robotically studying the birds, Roz knew that each bird would sing, and when they would sing, and eventually why they would sing. The robot was beginning to understand the birds. But she was also beginning to understand the porcupines and the salamanders and the beetles, and she discovered that all the different animals shared one common language. They just spoke the language in different ways. You might say each species spoke with its own unique accent. When Roz first listened to the chickadees, their songs had sounds like twee, twiddle, twee, twiddle. But now, when the chickadees sang, Roz heard, "Oh, what a lovely day it is! Oh, what a lovely day it is!" Deer spoke, mostly with their bodies, but simply turning their heads, a doe could say to her family, "Let's look for clovers by the stream." Snakes often hissed to themselves things like, "I know there's a nasty mouse around here somewhere." Bees said very little. They used their wings to buzz a few simple words, like nectar and sun and hive. Frogs spent much of their time searching for each other. One would croak, "Where are you?" "I can't see you." And then the other would reply, "I'm over here. Follow my voice." When Roz stomped across the island, the animal squawks and growls and chirps had sounded like nothing more than meaningless noises. But she no longer heard animal noises. Now she heard animal words. Chapter 21. The Introduction. There was an hour each morning in the dim light of dawn when all of the island animals were safe. You see, long ago they had agreed not to hunt or harm each other during that hour. They called it the dawn truce. Most mornings the island residents would gather in the great meadow and spend an hour chatting with friends. Of course, not everyone attended those gatherings. The bears had never made an appearance, and the vultures just circled high above. But on this particular morning, an unusually large group of animals had come out to discuss some important news. "Settle down, everyone. I have something to say." Swooper the owl hooted as a large crowd from the lowest branch of the dead tree. "Last night I observed a mysterious creature right here in the great meadow. I have seen it to be covered in grass, so I couldn't get a look at it, but I think I may have been a monster." Looks of concern swept all over the crowd. "What was the creature doing?" said Dart the weasel. "It was speaking," said Swooper. "It kept repeating the same words over and over again, but each time it sounded a little different. At first it sounded like a cricket, and then it sounded like a raccoon, and then it sounded like an owl." "What was it saying?" said Diggertown the groundhog. "I could be mistaken," Swooper said, "but I think it was saying, 'Hello, my name is Roz.'" The crowd began to chatter. "Just where was this creature?" said Fink the fox. Everyone turned as the owl pointed its wing to a grassy lump in the meadow. It was a rather ordinary-looking grassy lump until it began to move. And as you probably guessed, the grassy lump was Roz. She had been there the whole time, camouflaged, watching, listening, and with all the animals looking around at her, she decided to introduce herself. The crowd stared in disbelief as the grassy lump started shaking the bulging upward and crumbled part, and then there was a robot. Just using her body and voice, the robot, spoke to the animals in their own language. "Hello, my name is Roz." The crowd gasped. Swooper fluttered up from the branch and screeched, "It's a monster!" "I am not a monster," said Roz. "I am a robot." A flock of sparrows suddenly took off. "Leave us alone!" squeaked Dart as he crouched low in the grass. "Return to whatever horrible place you come from." "I come from here," said Roz. "I have spent my whole life on this island." "Why haven't you spoke to us sooner?" screeched the owl from higher up in the tree. "I did not know the animal language until now," said the robot. Crosspoint, the buck, had heard enough, and she slipped into the forest with his family. "So what do you want from us?" growled Fink. "I have observed that different animals have different ways of living. I would like each of you to teach me your survival techniques." "I'm not going to help you," screeched the owl from the very top of the tree. "You seem so unnatural." "The monster just wants to gobble us up," shrieked Digtown. The groundhog disappeared in the hole. "I will not gobble anyone up," said Roz. "I have no need for food." "You don't need food?" Fink relaxed a bit. "Well, I need food, and lots of it. Why don't you make yourself useful and find me food?" "What would you like me to do?" said Roz. "Can you hunt?" The fox smiled at the hare on the side of the gathering. "It's almost time for breakfast." "I cannot hunt, but I can gather berries." The fox's smile disappeared. "Berries? I'm hungry for meat, not berries. Good luck with you, Roz. You're going to need it." And the fox trotted away. Roz looked up at the tree, but the owl was gone. And when the robot looked down again, she realized everyone else was gone too. Chapter 22. The New Word. The new word was spreading across the island. The word was Roz. Everyone was talking about the robot, and they all wanted nothing to do with her. "I don't think I'll ever feel comfortable knowing that Roz is on the prowl. I hope Roz camouflages herself as a rock forever." "Shh! There's Roz now. Let's get out of here." Roz wandered around the island, covered in dirt and green growing things, and everywhere she went, she heard unfriendly words, the words that would have made most creatures quite sad. But, rabbits robots don't feel emotions, and in these moments, that was probably for the best. Chapter 23. The Wounded Fox. My face, my beautiful face, someone help! Fink the fox was laying on the log, howling in pain with his face full of long, sharp quills when Roz appeared. Is there anybody else who can help? Would you like me to leave? Said the robot. No, please don't go. I'll take what I can get. What happened? I didn't think a porcupine could see me in the bushes, and when I went for his throat, suddenly there were quills in my face. Why did you go for his throat? Why do you think? Because I'm hungry. If you would have not attacked the robot, you would not have quills in your face. Yes, Roz, I know that, but Fox has gotta eat. I just didn't expect him to put up such a fight. There were even quills in my paws. I can't walk. My face is numb. I could die if you don't help me. What would you like me to do? Said the robot. I would like you to pull out the quills. Roz calmly knelt beside Fink and said, I will pull out the quills. The robot started to tug on a quill, but it snapped off in her fingers. Fink yelped and said, Pinch it closer to the skin. So Roz pinched the broken quill closer to the skin, and then, very slowly, she pulled it out. The fox winced in pain and said through his teeth, Please, Roz, to pull him out faster. This is agony. Roz quickly tugged out another quill, and then another, and the fox lay perfectly still, eyes closed tightly, wind whistling through his nose, until every single quill had been removed and placed in a neat pile beside him. Fink struggled to his feet. Thanks, Roz, I owe you one. The fox smiled briefly, and then he limped away. Chapter 24. The Accident. As Roz was wandering through the springtime, she saw different ways that the animals entered the world. She saw the birds guarding their eggs like little treasures until the chicks finally hatched. She saw the deer give birth to fawns who would run up and down in a matter of minutes, and the newborns were greeted by their loving families. Some of them were on their own for their very first breath. And then you're about to find out a few poor goslings would never get the chance to hatch. Roz was climbing up one of the forest cliffs when an accident happened. The wind started blowing out to the north, and suddenly clouds were rushing over the island. With clouds came a spring storm, a downpour actually. And there was our robot, clamping her hands onto a wet block of stone on the side of the island. But the block couldn't handle the extra weight. And as heavy as the robot was that hung there, cracks suddenly shot through the stone, and it started to break apart. Down went the robot, plummeting into the treetops below. She crashed through the branch after branch until she finally hooked an arm onto one. She was dangling there, gently swinging, as the rocks roared past her on the way to the forest floor. When the dust settled, Roz shimmied down the tree trunk. The ground was littered with broken rocks and splinters and wood and pulverized shub, and within all that rubble was a goose nest that had been torn to shreds. 2 dead geese were found, and 4 smashed eggs lay by the carnage. The robot stared at them with her soft glowing eyes, and then something clicked. Deep inside her robot brain, Roz realized she had caused the death of an entire family of geese. Chapter 25. The Egg. As Roz stood in the rain, staring at those poor little lifeless geese, her sensitive ears detected a faint peeping that was coming from nearby. She followed the peeps to the clump of the wet leaves to the ground, and she peeled back the leaves and discovered a single goose sunk in the mud. Mama, Mama, peeped in a tiny, muffling voice. The robot carefully cradled the fragile egg into her hand, and without a family, the unhatched gosling inside would be surely to die. Roz knew that some animals had to die for others to live. That was how the wilderness worked. But would she allow her accidents to cause the death of yet another gosling? After a moment, she started to walk, holding the egg. She moved through the forest away from the sad scene, but she didn't get very far. Fink burst out from the bushes. What happened? The fox panted. A whole family was shaken. There was an accident, said the robot. I climbed for those cliffs when the rocks started to fall. You should be more careful, said Fink. I'll get you the help you need, even if it's more porcupine trouble. I will be careful. What do you have there? Fink said, looking at Roz's hands. A goose egg. Oh, I love eggs. Can I eat it? No. Please? No. What do you want? scowled the fox. "I thought you didn't eat food. You may not have this egg, Fink." Fox sighed. He scratched his chin, and then he started to sniff his breeze. His nose had found the scent of dead geese. "You can keep your egg," he said as he trotted off to the cliffs. "I smell something better."